Anyway.
Over the weekend, the Trump administration deported hundreds of Venezuelans that it says are gang members.
Yeah, we're going to obviously start off on our news coverage with the Burger Reich. It is upon us. It is here. Very much so. It is incredibly damaging. The Alien Enemies Act is being used for the first time ever in U.S. history when there is no active war happening. This is devastating for many different reasons, but it is one of the darker chapters of American history when we had Japanese internment camps here in the United States of America, as you guys might recall, during World War II. Instead of learning from those lessons and vowing to never repeat them again, Donald Trump has now decided to use that same act, this time against Venezuelans that he actually brought here, Venezuelans that had to escape Venezuela as a direct consequence of the sanctions regime that he implemented against Venezuela, and then also offered temporary protected status to. Donald Trump was such a fan of TPS that he actually offered an extension on the TPS, temporary protected status, that he had afforded to the Venezuelan migrants coming in from Venezuela, the refugees, on his way out. Now, 4 years after that fact, when he's back in office, he's back with a vengeance. He's now decided that if you are of United States of America with a temporary protected status, which means proper documentation, mind you, as a refugee, he will revoke it. He will treat you as a hostile enemy combatant, and he will falsely smear you and claim that you are a part of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. And even if judges decide that this is illegal and try to hit a TRO, temporary restraining order, to stop the administration from falsely shipping Venezuelans, not to Guantanamo Bay this time, but instead to the CCOT facility in El Salvador, which is a direct concentration camp, the Trump administration will still follow through. They do not care. It is a new era of fascism. Earlier this morning, I said, I think that an even darker chapter of American history might be upon us. People might turn around and say, what do you mean, Hassan? America was founded on indigenous genocide. America was founded on ethnic cleansing and upholding chattel slavery. America was built on white supremacist slavery. You're right. And yet I still think that this next chapter in our history might be even darker than that, truly, because it kind of feels like we are moving in to the new fascist movement here in the United States of America, like straight Nazi Germany. We have a lot more technological prowess to be able to engage in industrialized death, and we are officially there. Let's take a look.
Over the weekend, the Trump administration deported hundreds of Venezuelans that it says are gang members, despite a judge's order to turn the flights around. The law at issue dates to 1798. A constitutional clash is likely looming. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce is tracking the story. Good morning, Mary.
George, good morning. Well, we are now seeing a real showdown between this administration and the judicial branch. The White House this morning is celebrating this move, insisting the president is acting within his authority to speed up deportations, despite that directive from a federal judge that these Venezuelan immigrants be returned to the U.S. immediately. This morning, hundreds of alleged Venezuelan gang members are waking up in prison in El Salvador after the Trump administration rapidly deported them, ignoring a federal judge's directive. This video shared by El Salvador's president shows the...
It's sad that we will never ignore injunctions or court orders at the behest of a greater good for the public. Like the what are you going to do about it mentality should have been ever present when the Biden administration was following the letter of the law and using its executive powers to abolish all student loan debt, right? Can't do that. No, we can't do that. Those are institutions that we must defend. Okay, here's how you do it for evil. It only goes in one direction.
The alleged members of the Tren de Aragua gang arriving in San Salvador Saturday, just hours after a judge ordered planes carrying the men to immediately...
Yeah, they're doing straightforward Nazi propaganda on this, by the way. They're doing straightforward Nazi propaganda on this. They shave their heads. There is no justification shown whatsoever that any of these people that were targeted and picked up were actually a part of any gang. Even if they were a part of Tren de Aragua, by the way, this kind of, like this right here, what they're doing here is completely unjustifiable. We have due process. You can't do that. Or you must not do that. We're officially in the black bagging stage. ICE comes in, does dragnets, grabs people, claims that they're Tren de Aragua, claims that they're a part of a group now, claims that they're a part of a gang engaging in criminal activity, and then ships them to a foreign nation. And we've contracted out, because we outsource everything, we've also outsourced our concentration camp. This is how it happens. For people that wonder, like, how did we get here? How did Nazi Germany become what it was? Like, this is it. You're here. You're watching it happen. You're watching an overseas example in Israel, and you're watching the domestic example here in the United States of America.
We return to the U.S. Trump over the weekend invoking the Alien Enemies Act, an obscure wartime law from 1798, allowing the government to deport non-citizens with little or no due process. The law last used to play a role in the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II.
I'll simply say they never should have been allowed into our country in the first place. It's ours.
Trump allowed them into the country. Trump is a major role player in why they had to leave Venezuela, okay? It's not just about Maduro. You need to understand something. I don't care what like Venezuelans that live here will say over and over again. I don't care what the media says over and over again. Trump and his sanctions regime on Venezuela played a very big role in the Venezuelan economy going tanking even further at a time when they needed aid, okay? They said Maduro's a bad guy, fair, sure, whatever, okay? And use that as a justification to make the economy scream. And the economy did scream. And as a direct consequence of that instability, many Venezuelans escaped Venezuela. They went to Colombia. They went to other Latin American countries. And a lot of them also came to the United States of America. Trump, politically, as he has done in the past, as the American administrations have done in the past with like Cubans who are escaping Cuba, right? Offered Venezuelans temporary protective status. He said, you guys are political refugees. We are anti-communist. You are anti-communist. Come to America. We'll use you, right? That's usually the goal for American empire. They bring in a bunch of reactionaries or bring in a bunch of people who are escaping political repression and use them as a propaganda tool. So that's what we did. The American government did that. And in the process, Donald Trump was such a fan of offering temporary protected status to the Venezuelan refugees that came into the United States of America that he actually extended it on his way out. And then Joe Biden became president for 4 years, and now he turned around and is revoking the TPS in this insanely violent manner, deciding that every single Venezuelan on U.S. soil that has documentation, mind you, documented or undocumented, but virtually all of the Venezuelans on U.S. soil are documented. They have the paperwork. They got temporary protected status. Understand that they have the documents. These are not undocumented migrants, okay? They have the documents or they're in the process of getting their documentation, as in their court documents. The Trump administration turned around and black-bagged a bunch of Venezuelans that they had actually welcomed into the U.S., inside of the U.S. boundaries. And in a pure political ploy, decided to ship them to the El Salvador Terror Prison Unit, CCOT. We've watched the El Salvador CCOT prison before on this broadcast because a bunch of right-wing Mexican YouTubers went there and glazed Bukele and also the prison structure and talked about how awesome it is that they're like torturing people there. Lights on 20. Here we are. Another gross violation of human rights. In El Salvador, we've been under a state of exception since 2021, meaning we have no constitutional rights. People can be jailed without committing a crime or ever seeing a judge. Bukele has shut down all transparency, so any Venezuelan sent here can end up in a concentration camp with no records or oversight. Yes, I know. The prison system in El Salvador right now due to MS-13 gang activity that was truly violent, okay, which is another American issue that we basically gave to El Salvador, but I'm not going to get into the history of that right now. Having said that, because of the massive amounts of crime caused by MS-13, which was born out of the U.S.